My challenge was to him, I wanted to hear him say we are the lowest, but because of all the algorithms that go into calculating fees, there's no way for them to guarantee me without having to go through the math of each city's deal that we were. So we looked at Monroe and a few others that we knew had been historically considered that. We go under them, and so I would say safely, they had to say it, I guess as they say, as the lawyers made them among the lowest. The idea was to be the lowest was the challenge. But I can't tell you everybody's algorithm, how it pumps out. I can only tell you that this puts us in our region lower than RAPC, Monroe, Lafayette, any of the local folks. And it eliminates certain contractor registration fees altogether. There's a minimal budget impact. Just made more sense to drop it rather than think about raising it. And so along with growth with Alexandria and some of the other programs, you get a simplification out of this too by doing this. You get rid of some of the deeper algorithms that are hard for them to calculate. It allows them to potentially grow into better electronic interfacing because it's simpler and give people a good feeling about building and doing things here. So this is one step of many, but we would commend it to you that you have nothing to lose. Try it for a year or two. If you don't like it, you can come back and revisit it because its budget impact is too minimal to matter. Let's see if it attracts more people and makes our people happier and helps people who have really been, I will tell you all that there are families and people that grow up in the contracting and building process and they know, well, it's handed down generationally and they have that. And there are folks who are challenged and haven't had that extra help. And so this also would go a long way with helping them not have some of those challenges. So both from our diversity program and just in general for small business, we think this is a good idea. I'll answer any questions you have.
I think it's a good idea. I think that it'll certainly won't hamper development and probably will help some. The complaint that I received over time has not been the cost of fees, but and I don't know if it's true or not, but the arduous inspections that these folks have to go through to get things done. And sometimes they feel like, and I can't give you a particular, but sometimes they feel like wiring something a certain way is within what is allowed, but our inspectors say, no, you can't do it that way. And what about having somebody that's looking at that too while we're doing it?
Well, I'd like to say something to that. If it's my house, I want it done the top way. I'm not nothing wrong with the inspectors pushing them a little bit further. I know that one of my friends, when he built this house, and he was talking about the inspectors, I want it done completely correct. I don't want, the more the inspectors do it, that's off the subject.
Well, I agree with you, and I'm certainly not suggesting that. What I'm suggesting is that there may be two ways to do something that work equally as well. And our folks may or may not allow a choice of doing it either way. That's the only thing I'm asking is if that is a consideration or could be a consideration.
Well, as far as the item under consideration, I think it's great. It's not pretty much anything we can do to spur on development and to make it more attractive for people to build homes. I think to start building businesses whatever. Anything we can do to help that is a win-win, not only for their project but for the whole city. So, fully supportive of this.
Just to go through it, you got current law, there's a middle proposal, and then there's some examples of in dollar amounts how it would affect people. I think you can see it. It's a big line.
But that move to recommend.
All righty, and I believe that was, we will send that on to the entire council for consideration. And second, that's the only item on the committee, so this committee is adjourned.
Kyle, we'll talk, we'll deal with you about those concerns. I want to keep all the praise in the world on Melinda, but I only hear good things. And she was here in the prior administration in this one, and I think the friendliness of that process has come a long way since we used to talk about needing an ombudsman and all those other things. So I think they're doing a good job.
One of the folks that I know that are in that business like to go up there now.
That's something to say.
All right, I'd like to call to order the Finance Committee. The committee consists of myself, Lizzie Pelter, Chuck Fowler, and Lee Rubin. The first item is to consider final adoption of an ordinance amending the 2023-2024 operating and capital budgets.
This is what I think we refer to as a major budget amendment.
Yes, sir.
And this trues up the budget, hopefully for the remainder of the year to finish out the year, as it has been projected and predicted and finalized. So,
And the new budget starts, y'all probably started working on all that.
Yes, it'll come down to you guys by charter on March 15th. And it is not abnormal. This one could come in anywhere from December to now. It's not required to be at midpoint, major budget amendment. It's required to true up before the end of the fiscal year. Those things that are predicted versus what actually happens. And you'll see in your book the adopted, the increase or decrease in the middle, and the adjusted on the right, where you end up. The major highlight would be on this first page. If you go to 33,700, that line under other, and you'll see use of prior year revenues, the projected use in the prior budget, which would have been 8 months previous administration, then our guys coming in would have been 9.6. We lowered that by about, or 9.9 with all total in, lowered to 2.29 to 7 even final. And so that's a decrease in projected use of fund balance by a considerable amount, but that does include all of the 5% interfund transfer in utilities, which was necessary, so you roll that into it.
We didn't do that last year, did we?
Last year, so I think.
We amended it out, yes.
Amended out, it was initially projected, so. In years past, I have often talked about wanting to move us completely off. There's nothing wrong with it. Sometimes the media and people get it very confused. If you were to be paying CLECO and didn't have your own assets as a physical hedge against the market and all of the good things we have, you pay these funds anyway. You'd also pay other just direct fees. So while all of it's cheaper to do it this way, it would be normal for you to pay a franchise type fee. This is you giving it to yourself to fund the zoo, the buses, those things that typically lose but are part of our quality of life and necessary. Still in all, we have thought before with Paul coming on, you know, you get the fresh eyes of, well, Mayor, what's the policy? What do you want it to be? You must have asked that 5 times. You want to really move us off. And my answer was always that we did. It'd be nice to not need it, but it's normal to use it, but it would be nice. After all of the audit and all the information we've already given you of the last few years before, you don't have any choice right now for certain. And I would predict that next year you're going to need to be thinking through that. I also think 2020 COVID, all of these things forward, we're always a year or so behind what maybe the rest of the state or super region does. We need to see where sales taxes settle. Right now, not so bad. Not right at CPI, right at the,
Yes.
you know, so there's, and that CPI's growth, what, 2.25%?
Yes.
So, you know, we'd like to see a couple of years under belt before we make a prediction of what to do. But this was the full 5%. We've talked a long time about it and whether we were going to do it or not. And we've had a few different options, an A, a B, and a C, if you will. And we settled that this was the only responsible thing to do. But it also allows you a decrease in your overall. So it's there. It's doing what it's supposed to do. There's nothing strange or weird about it. In fact, the strange would be to not need it at all. That would be great. And it felt like there were some years we were heading that way, but I'm not ready to predict in these economic times where we are. It's a strange economy in some ways. We'll have a lot more data for you at the time of big budget. We'll present to you revenue projections and so forth at that time. This just trues up the budget for the public and you. This is not the new budget. This is reconciling your checkbook like you would do every month. This is the big one we're required by law to do.
And every, reviewing it, I do want to thank Mr. Johnson, Mr. Carpenter and the administration for making themselves available to us to be able to meet and go through and ask our questions line by line. It's tedious, but I feel like it's necessary to get everything where it needs to be. And then also, when we do start to plan for the new budget for the council, we need to make sure we're thinking of what our districts need, what our constituents need, and be mindful that, our feedback is vital to the administration. And, I think working together to look for next year's budget is gonna be great to come together and really communicate what we need and what we want, or what our constituents want, and then look at the budget to see what we can do, so.
If you guys go to 377504, line 377504, the first page, just to give the public who, I guess they're not seeing it, but just to understand a major budget amendment. So there you see an adopted 240,000 and a decrease under that CLECO rent. Well, that was CLECO, that's the call center rent, correct?
Yes.
And so that's coming out because they're leaving the call center. So major budget amendment, if you can imagine, that's $250,000. There's quite a few of those that add up either way, pluses or minuses. And under state law, we're required to not let that get out of a certain percentage of whack. And so that's that for the public to understand, that's what major budget amendment does. So we come in and you'll see the decrease, you'll see the adjusted become zero. And if you look throughout it, you'll see both large and small numbers that are there. In fact, right under that in the section for utility, sanitation, zoo, et cetera, you'll see some adopted and some changes in those numbers that are, significant. If you add all those up, they become required under state law to reconcile. We also recognize things at different points in the year, so you have something recognized at the end of the year you didn't do before, and all of those things can have a major effect in terms of revenue, et cetera.
I asked this question in our meeting before, but just remind me if you would, under the large increase in sanitation, that was a rolling stock, was it not, most of it?
Yes, sir. Predominantly.
Yes.
We just got a bunch of new garbage trucks.
There was a deferral, like we talked about with police cars, of some things that I think you gotta
It wasn't that
purchase on a regular basis.
it wasn't that we didn't try to buy, we couldn't get it.
Yeah, some of it was just hard to get. With sanitation, take different views. Sometimes you try to work on them, but a certain amount you just have to be purchased. I looked hard at that one too, Lee. I actually went through and made them show me that you did.
You do a good job. It's to the dollar.
Not sure.
Mr. Johnson, what's a new garbage truck?
Refuse truck, that's the backload of the garbage truck itself. I will say they're over 200 each nowadays.
That includes the chassis and the.
Yes, the cabin chassis and the back part,
Yeah.
that includes the crusher
Yeah.
and the compartment that it's crushed into.
A little more static and predictable than fire trucks.
Oh, yes.
So between 1 and 3 million.
Anywhere there. And 4 or more years out when you order, so a problem, a big problem actually. We did account for it in MBA. I pushed to put it on, the chief is right there. And when we come to the big budget, it'll be in there because we need to order it. And so that's a perfect example. You'd like to think that you could tell them to order it and then not have that big of an item in capital, because remember, it's the only rolling stock that's part of the capital budget. But you can't, because one of your 504 requirements is you can't have an allotment that doesn't exist, right? Not to bring up the source of all that, but that's what 504 says. So you can't sign an agreement, even though it's into the future, if you're not budgeting that amount. And so we're gonna have a big hit sitting there waiting for years.
One other thing, the chief would speak to, because I'm not qualified, you probably couldn't believe it more than I am, but those things are extraordinarily expensive, but they last an extraordinarily long time.
About 20 years.
Okay, so per year, it's a great investment for the city to have. Keeping in mind that our fire rating has been adjusted
To a one.
to a 1, and I don't even know another city in Louisiana that has a 1.
There's a few that weren't many, but there's a few. Baton Rouge, I think.
There are, there's 14.
Big and small, there's a few. But that's a huge deal. That changes people's property insurance and, this guy's, he's on top of new things all the time. There's all kinds of things you can do. Yes. All right, so that's major budget amendment. No big surprises in it. Again, we made the policy decision on the 5%. We explained to you why, and I don't see that changing probably next year. Talked about doing 4 just to ratchet down. It becomes somewhat arbitrary at some point. You can adjust it next year. You can adjust it at major budget amendment next year. It's fine.
Any other questions or comments
I
on that?
move to recommend.
Second.
All right, number 2, our committee agenda to consider final adoption of an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a professional services agreement with Rick Loggins and SMBA to assist, advise, and provide support for city offices, including the finance division, finance, utility administration, and finance information systems, and otherwise provide with respect to the agreement and matters related thereto.
This item is a consultant that for now would take the place in some ways of having someone permanent in the CIO position. If you recall, the first line of business we took up in the new administration were meetings that included the first and only so far meeting in executive session on security and security-related matters. This is a follow-up to that, so we're careful about how much, but one of the recommendations that we had talked about, and there's no vote to come out and do, but it was the idea, and many of you have expressed it to me, that we have a charter that still functions with a chief, information officer, if you will, or IT, information technology, IS, all of that is really functioning as part of finance. So in the charter, in the finance division, in the list of items delegated into finance is alignment. I think it says something like computerized services. That's how old alignment. You imagine. That's the only reference, and that's what has put IT, IS, all of these years under finance, which makes sense. But similar thing at the state level, these all have been pulled out. If you look at the state of Louisiana, other states, other cities, over the years, procurement codes and everything that have to do with IT, IS have started to largely be exempt. There's all kinds of special rules. You can imagine why. In this case, we have 2 already consultants the city's had for a long time. We needed to get someone to act as an owner's rep for us. So as we make big purchases, as we go down that list of items we talked to you about in executive session, you gotta have qualified people. And without a CIO still, he would be acting in a contractual role with limitations to help us owner's rep through that. So just like we'd have an engineer as an owner's rep on a major city project, his role would be to do that. How we came about him, since I'm a fan of a full RFQ on these types of things, is through our existing consultants having Cindy perform that for us, meaning St. Tammany and some other folks had come through a pretty tough time after Katrina and all of those things they faced. I think one of the things he did was the recovery school districts in New Orleans. I think the LSU med system had used him. He came highly recommended. So in essence, existing consultants we had did not point to a person that said, go to these areas. One of them was St. Tammany that has done this taking themselves from old school to new school really well. And when you went and did the homework, that was the name. So staff met with him over quite a few days, grilling, and we did our full background. They've already done it. We do it again. We check every reference on this one. It's what we would call an actual check. It's not just a, hey, this person okay. It's a how they perform. They have to let us do that. We have to be able to sort of grill and figure that out. Ms. McGill's and others headed it up. I've met him quite a few times. He's definitely a good fit for us as we try to move through this process of figuring out. And we're not married to anything. We take it by task orders. If there's not a fit, we move on. He is not in a point in his life. He's more in a retirement zone to help cities do this, so he would not be seeking the CIO position, but he certainly could help us craft an RFQ to do that. It is still my recommendation that we get to that point. The finance director should not be the CIO, Ms. Alexandria. He knows that. I know we've got to get to a point where we have a person do that. It may even require you adding that in the charter to be a new division, the 10th one, if you will. But right now, you could do it as a mayoral assistant. I still have the slot held and budgeted, so no real budget impact here, and I would have that slot at the end already there, and our point would be not to fill that right now as we work through it. I'll answer any questions you have.
So basically, the cost of this would be covered under whatever that was that you had budgeted for the mayoral assistant position.
We have that slot available.
I believe we do, yes.
And if I have someone in it, we still have it. We have it budgeted in finance. We already have it budgeted either way. But I know I have more than one, what are called an Act 390 available. So either way, and I'll be happy. I will look and check that today and make sure that what I'm telling you is accurate.
This is not sure, but it's going to help us avoiding the computer problems that we had as far as the invasion of our system.
I'll say less is more.
Exactly.
I will recommend.
And I will second it.
All right. The financial committee is closed.
Take a break, we'll go back to 5 o'clock.
Hey guys, we'll be back at about 5 o'clock. This was the end of the committee meetings, just to discuss a couple of things. As we said just a few minutes ago, we will upload a copy of some of those documents that you guys were requesting, the budget and any other support document that we may have in our possession. Let's see.
It's still clean?
Yeah.